Teacher calls black girl a liar about her father being in NASA, and freezes when her father walks into the classroom wearing his space gear. Ava Thompson, stop lying to the class now. Teacher Jennifer Clark's voice echoed through the Lincoln Elementary classroom like thunder, abruptly cutting off the 9-year-old's presentation. All 28 third-grade students turned to look at Ava, who nervously held her project on space professions. The teacher snatched the poster from the girl's hands so hard that it tore one of the edges. Your father is not a NASA astronaut, young lady. Stop making up fantastical stories to impress your classmates. Ava felt her face flush. But Ms. Clark, it's true. My dad works at the Johnson Space Center and... Enough. Clark interrupted, waving the torn project in the air. Kids like you are always making up lies about their parents to make themselves look special. Astronauts don't live in simple houses in the neighborhood where you live. They're important people with degrees from expensive universities. The silence in the room was deafening. Ava could feel all eyes on her, some classmates whispering to each other. Tyler, a blond boy in the front row, raised his hand timidly. Teacher, maybe her dad really. Tyler, sit down. We're not going to validate lies in this classroom. Clark turned to Ava with that fake smile that all teachers use when they're being cruel for the sake of education. Ava, sweetie, there's nothing wrong with parents who have ordinary jobs. My father was a mechanic, and I was proud of him. But lying is ugly. Ava Thompson was only 9 years old, but in that moment she felt something that many black children feel too early, the weight of not being believed simply for existing. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. Not there, in front of everyone. Ms. Clark, Ava said in a voice that was surprisingly calm for a child who was being publicly humiliated. My father returned yesterday from a 3-week training mission. He's coming here at 2 p.m. to give a presentation on space exploration. You can call the office and confirm. Clark laughed dismissively. Ava, stop it. You're digging yourself deeper into this ridiculous lie. What Ms. Clark didn't know was that Dr. Michael Thompson had indeed landed at Ellington Air Force Base the night before, after 3 weeks of intensive training for his upcoming mission to the International Space Station. And at that very moment, he was at the Johnson Space Center, organizing some real space equipment he had promised to bring to his daughter's school presentation. More importantly, Clark had no idea that the simple house where the Thompsons lived was only 15 minutes away from the Space Center because Dr. Thompson had deliberately chosen a quiet, multicultural neighborhood, far from the spotlight, so that Ava could grow up with her feet on the ground, despite her father's extraordinary job. Ava returned to her desk with the torn project in her hands, maintaining her dignity as Clark continued the class as if nothing had happened. But her classmates noticed something different in the girl's eyes. It wasn't sadness or shame, it was a quiet determination that made some wonder if they really knew Ava Thompson. Under the table, Ava discreetly checked the cell phone her mother let her carry for emergencies. A message from her father, Princess, finishing up preparations here. I'm bringing some surprises that will make the class's eyes light up. I love you. Ava put her phone away and smiled slightly. Clark interpreted that smile as insubordination, but anyone who really knew the Thompson family would know that it was something very different. It was the smile of someone who knows that the truth has an interesting way of revealing itself at the right moment. If you're enjoying this story about prejudice and the strength of a child who refuses to bow her head, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because what is about to happen when Dr. Michael Thompson walks into that room will completely redefine the concept of public humiliation. But this time, the one who will taste the bitter taste will be the one who should be protecting, not destroying, his students. The public humiliation was just the beginning. During recess, Clark didn't miss the opportunity to spread her version of the facts around the teacher's lounge. Can you believe it? That little black girl made up that her father is a NASA astronaut, clearly seeking attention. She laughed as she stirred her coffee, as if discussing the weather. These kids live in a fantasy world. Someone needs to bring them back to reality. Ms. Martinez, who taught the class next door, frowned. Jennifer, are you sure? Maybe you should check before you. Carmen, I've been teaching for 15 years. I know when a child is lying. Clark interrupted with that arrogance that only mediocre people have when they feel superior. Astronauts don't live in the Riverside Gardens neighborhood. Period. What Clark didn't know was that Riverside Gardens had been strategically chosen by the Thompson family precisely because it was a discreet, multicultural neighborhood where a family of space scientists could live without the spotlight. Dr. Michael Thompson had learned, after years of working on classified programs, that the less attention you attract, the better for your family's safety. Back in the classroom, Ava sat at the back, rearranging the torn pieces of her project. Other students whispered among themselves, some pitying her, others clearly doubting her as well. Tyler approached discreetly. "Ava, I believe you," he murmured. "My dad works for the government too, and he always says that the most important people are the ones nobody knows." Ava looked at Tyler gratefully. At least someone understood. "Thank you, Tyler. That means a lot." But Tyler's kindness was quickly crushed when Clark returned to the classroom. "Ava Thompson, come to the front, please." His voice had that fake tone of patience that teachers use when they want to appear reasonable while destroying a child. Ava walked to the front of the room, maintaining the upright posture she had learned from observing her parents' unshakable dignity. "Class, let's use this as an exercise in critical thinking," Clark announced, clearly savoring every word. "Ava, tell me, where exactly does your father work at NASA?" "At the Johnson Space Center in Houston, teacher. He's a specialist in life support systems for space missions." Some children whispered in awe at the specific details, but Clark just smiled condescendingly. "How interesting. And tell me, Ava, do you have pictures of him in space? Certificates on the wall? A space suit at home?" Ava felt the trap closing in. For security reasons, Dad can't show much about his work at home. He says that. "Oh, of course. For security reasons." Clark laughed too loudly, causing some students to laugh nervously along with him. How convenient. An excuse for everything, isn't it? What Clark couldn't see was the message arriving on Ava's cell phone at that very moment. A text from her mother, Dr. Lisa Thompson, a renowned biochemist. "Princess, your dad is at the center organizing real EVA equipment to take to the presentation. It's going to be unforgettable. We love you." Ava put her phone away, but not before Clark noticed. "Cell phone in class, Ava? What kind of example are you setting for the class?" "Sorry, Professor. It was a message from my mom." "Your mom? Let me guess, she also has an important and secret job." Clark's sarcasm was reaching toxic levels. "She's a doctor of biochemistry at the Houston Medical Research Institute. She develops medicines for astronauts." The room fell silent. Even to Clark, that sounded too specific to be a lie concocted by a 9-year-old. But instead of reconsidering, she doubled down. "Class, see how the lies keep getting bigger? First an astronaut dad, now a scientist mom." Clark crossed her arms. "Ava, sweetie, you understand that there's a difference between imagination and reality, right?" It was at that moment that something changed in Ava's eyes. Not anger, not sadness, a cold determination that made some classmates sit up straighter in their seats. It was the same look Dr. Michael Thompson had when he calculated complex orbital trajectories, the same one Dr. Lisa Thompson used when she analyzed chemical compounds that could save lives in space. "Ms. Clark," Ava said in a surprisingly calm voice, "when my father arrives here at 2 p.m., would you like to apologize in front of the class, or would you prefer to wait until he explains to the entire school about life support systems in zero gravity?" The silence in the room was deafening. Clark blinked several times, clearly not expecting such an assertive response from a child who should have been humiliated. "Ava Thompson, go to the principal's office. Now." Ava picked up her backpack with deliberate, calm movements. Before leaving, she turned to the class. "Tyler, can you write on the board that at 2 o'clock today you will learn about how astronauts breathe in space? My dad promised to bring real equipment." And then she left, leaving Clark with an expression of uncertainty for the first time in his 15-year career. In the hallway, Ava checked her phone again. A photo of her father organizing real NASA space helmets, oxygen tanks, and communication systems in his lab. The caption read, "Preparing the surprise of my life for my little girl. They don't know what's in store for them." Ava smiled for the first time since that morning. She had grown up hearing about precision, timing, and the importance of letting the data speak for itself. In an hour and 40 minutes, Dr. Michael Thompson would not just be a father defending his daughter. He would be a force of nature proving that underestimating a Thompson child, any Thompson child, was the kind of mistake that changed lives forever. Beneath that apparent calm, Ava knew she was about to witness something no 9-year-old should ever have to see, an adult discovering in the most humiliating way possible that all her assumptions about social superiority were about to explode like a miscalculated rocket, leaving only the wreckage of a career that would never be the same again. In the principal's office, Ava sat on the hard plastic chair while the secretary, Mrs. Rodriguez, watched her with an expression of genuine pity. "Honey, would you like me to call your parents?" she asked softly, her decades of experience recognizing when a child was being treated unfairly. "No need, thank you. My dad's coming at 2 o'clock anyway." Ava replied with that supernatural calm that made adults wonder if they were really dealing with a 9-year-old. Mrs. Rodriguez frowned. "At 2 o'clock? What for?" "For the presentation about astronauts that Ms. Clark said was a lie." The secretary stopped typing. In 15 years of working at that school, she had seen many children make up stories to impress their classmates. But something about the calm and specific way Ava spoke made her hesitate. "Where does your mother work, dear?" "Houston Medical Research Institute. She develops drugs so astronauts don't get sick in space." Mrs. Rodriguez felt a chill in her stomach. That was too specific to be a child's lie. She discreetly opened the school's computer system and checked the Thompson family's records. Father, Vincent Thompson, occupation, government employee NASA. Mother, Lisa Thompson, occupation, researcher, Houston Medical Institute. "Jesus," she whispered softly, picking up the phone. Meanwhile, at the Johnson Space Center, Dr. Michael Thompson finished carefully packing an EMU, extravehicular mobility unit space helmet used in actual spacewalks. Next to it, he organized a portable life support system, compact oxygen tanks, and a space communicator he had used on his last training mission. His colleague, Dr. Rodriguez, no relation to the secretary, watched in awe. "Mike, are you taking real mission equipment to an elementary school?" "My daughter was called a liar for telling the truth about her father's job." Dr. Thompson carefully closed the transport box. "Rodriguez, how many missions have you and I been on together?" 7. "Why? And how many times have you seen me back down when someone underestimates my family?" Rodriguez smiled. 0. God help that teacher. It's not about intimidation, buddy. It's about education. There are kids in that classroom who may never have seen a black adult in a position of authority and respect. Today they're not only going to see that, but they're going to learn that underestimating people based on appearance is scientifically impossible when you deal with facts. Back at school, Principal Mrs. Patterson finally arrived at her office after Mrs. Rodriguez's urgent phone call. "Explain to me again what happened," she said, sitting down at her desk. "Teacher Clark humiliated the girl in front of the whole class, called her a liar, tore up her project." Mrs. Rodriguez kept her voice low. "Patricia, I checked the records. Her father really does work at NASA." Mrs. Patterson felt her stomach churn. In 20 years as an educator, she knew exactly where this was going. "Where is Clark now?" "Teaching, as if nothing had happened." "And the child?" "Over there, waiting." Mrs. Rodriguez pointed to Ava, who was quietly reading a book she had taken out of her backpack. "Patricia, that girl has a composure that scares me. She's not nervous, she's not crying. It's as if she knows justice is on its way." Mrs. Patterson watched Ava for a moment. The girl looked up from her book and made direct eye contact, without looking away or appearing intimidated. This was not typical behavior for a child who had just been humiliated. "Ava, can you come here, please?" Ava walked into the principal's office with steady steps. "Yes, ma'am." "Tell me what happened in your class today." Ava told the story factually, without dramatizing or exaggerating. She mentioned every word Clark had said, every humiliation, every moment she was called a liar. Her voice remained calm throughout the narrative. "And is your father really an astronaut?" "Yes, ma'am. Dr. Michael Thompson. He returned yesterday from 3 weeks of training for his next mission to the International Space Station. I can show you the photos if you like." Ava pulled out her cell phone and showed photos of her father in spacesuits, inside simulators, in NASA laboratories. They weren't posed or professional photos. They were family photos of a father sending messages to his daughter while at work. Mrs. Patterson felt her hands tremble slightly. "Ava, does your father know what happened today?" "No, ma'am. I don't want him to worry. He said he was coming at 2 o'clock, so I thought it best to let him find out when he got here." The supernatural calm of that response made Mrs. Patterson realize she was dealing with a child who had grown up in an environment where problems are solved with facts and strategy, not emotional drama. "Ava, what do you think will happen when your father arrives?" For the first time, Ava smiled. It wasn't a malicious or vengeful smile. It was the smile of someone who grew up seeing complex problems solved with scientific precision. "I think Ms. Clark is going to learn a few things about gravity, ma'am." Gravity. My dad always says that what goes up must come down. Arrogant people rise too high without properly preparing for the landing. Mrs. Patterson swallowed hard. This was no ordinary child speaking. This was a child who had absorbed the wisdom and precision of two PhD scientists, who knew exactly how to deal with people who underestimate their abilities. At that moment, Mrs. Rodriguez knocked on the door. "Patricia, there's a man here from NASA who wants to talk to you. He says it's about educational equipment that will be presented today at 2 o'clock. Mrs. Patterson looked at Ava, who continued to smile calmly. "Let me guess. Your father sent someone ahead to prepare the ground." "Dad doesn't leave anything to chance, ma'am. He always says that successful missions depend on meticulous preparation and backup for all contingencies." The principal finally understood what was going on. Dr. Michael Thompson wasn't just going to show up at the school to confront a prejudiced teacher. He was treating it like a full-fledged scientific operation, with logistics, preparation, and clear objectives. "Ava, may I ask you a personal question?" "Of course, ma'am." "Aren't you even a little nervous about what's going to happen?" Ava thought for a moment before answering. "Ma'am, my mother saves lives by creating medicines that allow people to survive in space. My father makes decisions that keep astronauts alive in environments where a mistake can mean instant death. They taught me that when you have facts on your side, nervousness is just wasted energy." Mrs. Patterson felt a chill. "And are you sure you have the facts on your side?" "Ma'am, in approximately 1 hour and 10 minutes, my father will walk into this school carrying equipment that costs more than Ms. Clark's house. He will be wearing security credentials that give him access to federally classified information. And he will explain to a room full of impressed children exactly why judging people by their appearance is scientifically impossible when you deal with empirical evidence." The principal realized she had just witnessed something that few adults have the privilege of seeing, a 9-year-old who had inherited not only his parents' intelligence, but also their methodological approach to problem solving. And after that? Ava deliberately put her phone back in her backpack. "After that, ma'am, Ms. Clark will have to decide whether she wants to publicly apologize for judging an entire family based on prejudice, or if she'd rather explain to the school board why she chose to humiliate the daughter of a federal employee who has direct access to the NASA administrator's office." Mrs. Patterson felt her hands sweat. "Ava, do you understand that this could ruin your teacher's career?" "Ma'am," Ava replied with a serenity that reminded the principal that she was talking to the daughter of two people who literally planned space missions. "My father always says that the consequences of our actions are determined by physics, not by our desires. Ms. Clark chose her actions. Physics takes care of the rest." At that moment, Mrs. Patterson understood that she was not just witnessing a child defending her family. She was about to witness a practical demonstration of how people who truly hold positions of power and knowledge deal with those who confuse arrogance with authority. And for the first time in her 20-year career in education, she realized that perhaps it was Teacher Clark who needed to learn the most important lesson of the day, that true authority does not come from humiliating children, but from having the knowledge and competence to raise an entire classroom to the level of the stars. The clock on the wall read 1:15 p.m. In 45 minutes, Dr. Michael Thompson would walk into that school not as an angry parent, but as a force of nature proving that some people don't just reach for the stars, they control them. At 2 p.m. sharp, 3 black NASA cars pulled up in front of Lincoln Elementary like a small presidential motorcade. Mrs. Rodriguez, watching from the office window, felt her legs tremble. "My God," she whispered, "they brought a whole team." From the first vehicle, 2 men in dark suits emerged and began unloading equipment that looked like it came straight from the International Space Station. From the second car, Dr. Michael Thompson emerged wearing an official NASA jumpsuit with real mission patches sewn onto the chest, carrying a genuine space helmet that glinted in the Houston sun. Inside room 204, Teacher Clark desperately tried to maintain normalcy as her nerves unraveled. She had spent the last hour trying to convince herself that this child was lying, even after the disturbing phone call she had received from the principal. "Class, let's continue with our math lesson," Clark said in a slightly shaky voice as she wrote fractions on the board with visibly nervous hands. That's when the door opened. Mrs. Patterson entered first, followed by two NASA men carrying equipment that made the room look like a science fiction movie set. And then, filling the doorway completely, appeared Dr. Michael Thompson. The silence that filled the room was not just an absence of sound, it was a rupture in reality itself. 28 nine-year-olds had never seen a real astronaut in their lives, let alone one carrying equipment that cost more than the houses they lived in. Dr. Thompson didn't need to say a word. His presence commanded instant respect. His impeccably fitted NASA jumpsuit displayed mission patches that any literate adult would recognize: Artemis, ISS, International Training. This was no imposter or administrative staff member. This was clearly someone who had been to space. "Professor Clark," Dr. Thompson said in a voice that carried the calm authority of someone who makes decisions in zero gravity, "I believe you requested verification of my daughter's credentials." Clark felt her world collapse in slow motion. Her legs felt like jelly, her mouth was completely dry, and for the first time in her 15-year career, she couldn't form a single coherent word. I don't, how?" she stammered, clutching the table to keep from falling. "Children," Dr. Thompson turned to the class with a genuine smile, "my name is Dr. Michael Thompson. I have been a NASA astronaut for 16 years and have just returned from 3 weeks of training for my next mission to the International Space Station. I believe my daughter Ava was questioned about this information." The room erupted in excited whispers. Tyler raised his hand shakily. "Sir, have you really been to space?" "3 times, young man. And I can show you some of the equipment I use there." Dr. Thompson waved to his assistants, who began setting up a demonstration that transformed that third-grade classroom into something straight out of NASA. Meanwhile, Clark tried to hide behind her desk, praying for the floor to open up and swallow her. Every piece of equipment that was revealed, every patch on Dr. Thompson's uniform, every technical word he used with ease, was a nail in the coffin of her arrogance. "Ms. Clark," Dr. Thompson called her attention with cold courtesy, "I believe you have a few words for my daughter." The woman who had spent the entire morning humiliating a 9-year-old child now trembled like a leaf before the daughter of one of the most qualified scientists on the planet. "Dr. Thompson, I made a terrible mistake." "Yes, you did." Her voice didn't rise, but each word fell like a hammer. "You assumed that a black child was lying about her father's profession because our family didn't match your mental image of what an astronaut's family should look like." The room grew so quiet you could hear the air conditioning fan. The children stared between Dr. Thompson and Clark like spectators at a tennis match where only one side had a racket. "More importantly," Dr. Thompson continued, removing genuine space gloves from a carrying case, "you taught this room full of impressionable children that authority allows you to humiliate those you consider inferior. That is a lesson that will take decades to undo." Clark began to cry. Not tears of genuine remorse, but the desperate crying of someone who realizes they have just lost everything: credibility, authority, respect, possibly their job. "Dr. Thompson, please, I didn't know. I never imagined." "Exactly. You never imagined." He gently placed his hand on Ava's shoulder. She had watched the whole scene with that supernatural calm that now made perfect sense. She had grown up watching how truly important people deal with conflict. "You saw a black child from a modest neighborhood and decided it was impossible for her to be telling the truth." The NASA equipment was now fully assembled. Real oxygen tanks, space communication systems, suits that had literally been in space. The demonstration that followed was the most impressive thing those children had ever seen in their lives. But the most powerful moment came when Dr. Thompson knelt down next to Ava's desk and said, loud enough for the whole class to hear, "Sweetheart, I'm sorry you had to go through this alone. You behaved exactly as I expected you to, with dignity and strength. I'm proud of you." Then, turning to Clark with an expression that mixed pity and firmness, he added, "Teacher, the education of these children is sacred. When you humiliate one of them based on prejudice, you're not only hurting an individual, you're poisoning an entire classroom of young minds with the idea that judging by appearance is acceptable." Clark tried once more to explain herself, but her words came out as incoherent babbling. The woman who had started the day as an unquestionable authority now looked like a student being reprimanded for cheating on a test. The demonstration that followed was magical. Dr. Thompson showed how astronauts breathe in space, how they communicate with Earth, how they survive in a zero-gravity environment. Every child was mesmerized, especially when they realized that the liar girl in their class had access to this extraordinary world every night at dinner. When Tyler asked if he could try on the space helmet, Dr. Thompson smiled. "Of course, but first I want you all to understand something important. It doesn't matter where you come from, what color your skin is, or how much money your parents have. If you want to touch the stars, the only thing that matters is to study, work hard, and never, ever let anyone tell you that your dreams are impossible." The look he gave Clark as he spoke these words needed no translation. The woman had just been given a lesson in how to truly teach, taught by someone whose job was literally to reach for the stars. The next 2 hours were the most humiliating of Jennifer Clark's career and the most glorious of Ava Thompson's life. While the children lined up to try on real space equipment, Clark remained in the corner of the room, irrelevant and diminished, watching how true education happens when you treat every child as capable of greatness. The question hanging in the air was not whether Clark would survive that public humiliation, but whether she would ever be able to look in the mirror again knowing that she had tried to destroy the dreams of a child who had more access to the stars than she would ever have to anything of real importance. And as Dr. Thompson transformed that ordinary classroom into a portal to the cosmos, it became clear that some lessons about respect can only be learned when you discover that you have underestimated someone who literally works above the clouds where your arrogance will never reach. 6 months later, Clark was packing up her last belongings. The dismissal came after a thorough investigation. Other parents reported similar cases of prejudice. Her educational career was over. Ava, now in 4th grade, led the school's astronomy club. Dozens of children, inspired by her story, dreamed of the stars. Dr. Thompson visited monthly, showing that dreams have no color. Tyler remained friends with Ava, learning that courage sometimes means defending those who are right, not those in power. Mrs. Patterson implemented strict anti-discrimination protocols. Jefferson Elementary became a national example of inclusion. Clark's humiliation became a case study in education colleges, how prejudice destroys careers and hurts children. Ava learned that truth has gravitational power. The more they try to suppress it, the stronger it returns. If this story touched you, subscribe to the channel. Because sometimes the best revenge is not to destroy those who underestimate us, it is to prove that our greatness shines brighter than any prejudice.